Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Over the past few years, the Council has been working to develop its third sector asset transfer policy and related processes, basically to build on the sort of ad hoc approach that we have previously adopted and to formalise it. We've always had a good relationship with the third sector, and this is us moving forward in a fashion to build on that. Now, my role today, as Finlay has outlined, is to try and make interesting the policy, the national and policy context, and I intend doing that by examining just a few things. Firstly, I'll look briefly at the overall national policy context that has driven our approach. I'll also look at how we have responded to that within the locality here in Argyll and Bute. I'm going to thereafter briefly look at the principles that will govern our approach to adjudication over third sector transfer proposals. I will look at issues for consideration, the key things, the key challenges we face, and then finally I'll very quickly review the positive benefits that hopefully will arise for all of us from the approach. Firstly, the national policy context. And initially, we have to pay respect to the work that COSLA carried out in 2009, which clearly demonstrated to us that transferring assets to the third sector to assist with empowering communities would be a very good thing. And that's something that the Council has endorsed. We fully support the notion of that in appropriate circumstances. We also have to take our hats off, I believe, Mr Chair, to the work that has been going on in the background, carried out in the background of the Development Trust Association for Scotland. Very valuable work in establishing the community ownership support service, and that has, in my view, been of vital importance so far and will be so as we move forward in the future. In the background as well, we have to give consideration to the ongoing financial constraints right across the public sector, and that has been a very significant driver in our considerations. It really is forcing all public agencies to review and rationalise their asset base to ensure that it's fit for purpose in moving forward. Clearly the business we're all in, could change over time, and as a consequence there is a requirement on an ongoing basis to make sure that the asset base is fit for purpose. I'll speak more about that later when I'm examining the local policy context. Moving forward, in taking forward the national scenario, it is clear that now greater collaboration is expected between public agencies, and in that regard we were all encouraged in May of 2012 by the then Cabinet Secretary for Infrastructure and Investment when he wrote all chief executives and local authorities and in other public sector agencies to set this target for savings, a target of £500 million that we've to try and achieve savings on by 2016. Very challenging situation, but it clearly was designed to make us all focus our efforts on the future of our asset base. And that was to be achieved, however, through a combination not simply of capital receipts maybe gained from the disposal of assets, but the realisation in some instances that capital receipts simply won't be attainable. It may not be appropriate to look for them, but rather also from revenue savings, saving on the running costs of assets that are perhaps transferred from the public authorities to the local authorities in appropriate, from public authorities to the third sector rather, in appropriate circumstances. And to assist us in our way, the challenge came or was given to the Scottish Futures Trust to try and support, enable, encourage, whatever word you like, the approach that's being adopted by public sector agencies, and I can confirm that Argyle and Bute has been working pretty extensively with Scottish Futures Trust in relation to this process. And finally, as I sum up on national policy context, clearly we're all mindful of what's likely to arise, or what's going to emerge once the Community Empowerment and Renewal Bill is enacted. We all have an eye to that and understand that that will have an important influencing factor for us. Moving on now, Chair, I wish to very briefly review the local policy context. And as everyone knows, the Council retains assets basically to enable and support service delivery. There is no point in doing that just for the sake of doing so. We wish to make sure that our asset base is efficient and would be fully supportive as we move forward to the delivery of our policies and practices. And this has shaped the background of where we're going on today. It has shaped our policy, it's shaped also our ideas on the approach to asset disposal. In the background as well, in the locality here, we have already, as an authority, trimmed our asset base in response to the requirement to reduce budgets. We've already cut between 15 and 20% from our local budgets and are likely to meet further constraints as we move forward over the next few years. This makes it even more imperative to ensure that our services align assets to future requirements for delivery. We need to sustain only what is required. So, in part of my role as Head of Facility Services in the Council, I chair the Council's Strategic Asset Management Board, and annually we provide a corporate challenge to all services to confirm what assets they really truly need. We don't want them to simply sustain assets for the sake of doing so. We want them to be as prudent as they can moving forward. And that challenge in future years, Chair, I'm sure will give further opportunities for consideration of asset transfer. And we're working on this very closely now with our partner agencies. I refer to the challenge of on the whole public estate. So we're working closely with police, with fire, with NHS as well as we move forward. And a key watchword for us in this approach is looking at the possibility of a co-location of services so that we can release assets for alternative. Just finally, in the local policy context, we of course have taken account of what the local third sector have said to us through the demonstration project. We have informed the development of a process from that, and that resulted in the development of our policy in September of last year. As I've touched on, although councils hold assets to support the delivery of service, we really do also recognise that in certain circumstances it wouldn't be appropriate at all times to retain ownership ourselves. There could be advantages to both the council in delivering its objectives and indeed to the community in perhaps securing the transfer of our assets to alternative organisations. Now, this may be to lever in funding that wouldn't be available to the council, but it's also recognised that it could directly promote additional benefits to communities and indeed to the partner organisation that may indeed be taking forward either the ownership or management of the asset in the future. Very quickly, Chair, looking at the principles of third sector asset transfer, these effectively are the fundamentals, the imperatives that we as a council would like to see addressed prior to a transfer going ahead. Now, they're really safeguard checks for both the council and indeed for the third sector organisations that we could be working with. They're very explicit, Chair. Clearly we need to ensure alignment with policies and plans, and in particular the single outcome agreement. We need to make sure that we accord with the Council's corporate asset management strategy. We don't want any potential move to be detrimental to any plans or strategies, and that is a fundamental requirement. We want it to be complementary rather than detrimental. And ultimately, in developing our policy and practices, we want to be confident that we're working in a transparent manner where we are equitable and can be accountable if challenged at any stage in the future. And finally, Chair, in this particular aspect, we have to ensure that any asset disposal that's being considered is carried out in accordance with the requirements of the appropriate regulations. Just winding up now, Chair, I have a couple of slides to finish on. My penultimate one here allows me to sort of briefly outline the checks and balances, further outline the checks and balances that will be applied when the Council is asked to consider an application for transfer of an asset. And as I mentioned, these are set to ensure the protection of all the parties that are involved. We will take care to examine the key benefits that may arise to both the community and the Council from any proposal that comes up. And we'll look at the impact on service delivery. We obviously have to give consideration to the fact that we may be losing income if we transfer an asset. We may also, in some circumstances, be removing the potential for capital receipt if an asset is transferred through the third sector policy. But ultimately, in considering any potential transfer, we're looking to ensure a sustainable future, both for the asset and the organisation that is requesting the potential transfer. And just finally, Chair, to sum up the benefits, we absolutely recognise that in appropriate circumstances, the potential transfer of our assets to a third sector organisation could be of significant benefit. Benefit in relation to community empowerment. It could actually help also to sustain the third sector in an area, or indeed in a particular niche area. It could stimulate in some circumstances social enterprise, and there are numerous examples, probably the most or the largest scale one being the example of Atlantis Leisure in Oban, but there are others. We recognise at the other end of the scale that could have an equally important impact on local communities and local economic development opportunity. What ultimately we're looking for is delivery, working together on delivery of agreed outcomes that will help us as a council, even in times of austerity, to ensure a delivery of our corporate objectives. And Chair, I'm happy to say today, in linking actually with the next presentation which will come from Brenda on the process itself, that we've received, as can be accommodated within our policy, an approach, an expression of interest from the Toward Community Sailing Club. And what they have agreed to do as we consider their application for a potential transfer is to assist us in road testing the processes and practices. And I think that ultimately will be to the benefit of other groups who may wish to follow at some stage in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.